about cruising, they imagine sunbathing and buffets. But what if you're somebody who craves adventure? Can you find adventure on a cruise? Let's find out together. I decided to test this out by taking a 6-day cruise to Mexico and Belize, and it was honestly packed full of fun. From drifting at the sea to snorkeling in crystal clear water, it was an adventure filled with fun, flavors, and some unexpected surprises. So grab your curiosity and let's set sail! Boarding a cruise ship is very easy, and honestly, it flew by. As soon as you step onto the boat, it's like immediately entering another world. I boarded right around the time that the rooms are ready, so I was able to find my room immediately. I was sailing the Carnival Dream, which was built in 2009 and has 1,823 rooms. I was on the second floor in the middle of the ship, which is the best because you get less motion from the ship the farther down and more in the middle you are. When you board a cruise ship, you can check your luggage and it will be waiting outside your room for you, which is fantastic if you have an early boarding time because then you're not worried about lugging your luggage around the ship. However, because I got to board right around the time that our rooms were ready, I did go straight to my room once I boarded. I decided to cruise solo as a way to challenge this question on if we can have adventure on a cruise, and thankfully, I did have the room all to myself. I think 2 friends sharing a room like this may have become a little awkward as there would have been no way to not share a bed, but not all cruise cabins are like this. The room was surprisingly spacious and it felt like it could have been any hotel room. Overall, you can tell this ship is a little outdated. It is 16 years old after all. The art on the walls definitely screamed 2000s. I loved how much storage space there was in the room, and it definitely would have been ample for 2 people. The bathroom was very standard sized in terms of cruise bathrooms, which is definitely on the smaller side, but there was ample room for all of your shower stuffs and bath products. There was a mini fridge and 1 US and 1 UK outlet, which is very standard, but a nice surprise was that there was USB ports in the lamps right next to the bed for extra power and powering your phone when you're going to sleep, allowing you to charge your phone near the bed. The bed was just 2 twin beds pushed together, so even if you were sleeping in the room solo, there was no possibility of me sleeping in the middle of the bed. I sailed out of Galveston, Texas, which isn't the prettiest port in my opinion. The Gulf of Mexico in that area has really murky water and is pretty industrial, but I do love the breeze that hits you once you sail away. When we embarked, it was very humid and quite stagnant, so the breeze was a welcome change. However, once we set sail, that feeling of excitement and anticipation sets in, and how pretty or not the port is doesn't matter anymore. It's like you switch into official vacation mode. Right after we set sail, the cruise director kicked things off with a big dance party out on the main deck. It's called the Sail Away Party. Everyone was invited to join, and even if you didn't know the dances, it was impossible not to get swept away in the energy. There were line dances, conga lines, random dance battles. It was just pure fun. But honestly, my favorite part was when the entertainment crew came out. They got introduced one by one and then absolutely crushed it with some seriously impressive dance moves. It was such a fun way to start the trip, seeing the whole ship come alive and realizing that maybe this cruise was going to be a lot more exciting than I thought. After the energy of the sail away party, the ship started to settle into a rhythm, and that's when I realized if I was really going to find adventure on this cruise, it might not just be about the big excursions or wild activities. Sometimes adventure shows up in the small, unexpected moments, like my first dinner. I was assigned to a shared dining table with a group of older gentlemen I'd never met before who were also sailing by themselves. It definitely was not what I pictured, but you know what? It actually turned out to be its own kind of adventure. I spent the first full sea day just exploring the ship, finding all the best places to eat, the places with the best views, where all the cool kids hung out. It felt a little bit like a treasure hunt, finding all the places that I would like to hang out for the rest of the cruise. But also a treasure hunt for finding people that I could spend my time with on the cruise. I was all alone after all. One of the absolute highlights of this trip wasn't a place, it was 2 people, Amber and Heather. I met them while soaking in the hot tubs one afternoon, and within 5 minutes, it felt like I was talking to long-lost friends. They were 2 best friends from Missouri, small business owners, and the kind of people who just radiate warmth and generosity. We talked about everything, life, travel, taking risks, and they shared their story with such honesty and joy that I walked away feeling genuinely inspired. You know those moments when you meet someone and think, wow, people are still really good? Yeah, that was them. They also run a boutique, which I'll link below, not just because they sell cute stuff, which they absolutely do, But because supporting people like Amber and Heather, that feels like the kind of internet that I actually want to be a part of. And then there was Danny. I half-jokingly call him the savior of my cruise, but honestly, it's not that much of a joke. He was supposed to board with a friend, but in the wildest twist of fate, his friend got mistakenly detained at the port literally minutes before boarding, and suddenly Danny was faced with a choice: cancel the whole trip or walk onto that ship completely alone. And he chose to go. That decision might sound small, but it takes a certain kind of courage to throw yourself into the unknown like that. And Danny, he didn't just show up. He brought this magnetic energy that made everything better. We hit it off immediately, and from that moment on, most of the trip was just the two of us chasing whatever weird, fun adventure we could find. Meeting someone like Danny reminded me why I travel in the first place. Not just for the places, but for the people you never see coming. The trip started to shift from solo cruise experiment to something I might actually remember for the rest of my life. After meeting Danny, Heather, and Amber, the cruise was starting to feel like a real adventure, and just in time for our first real stop, Costa Maya, Mexico. I'd never been here before, so I was excited to explore. Costa Maya is definitely more of a shopping in the port kind of place rather than a place where you leave the port and explore the nearby town. There were plenty of excursions to do in Costa Maya, but none of them really suited my fancy, and I wanted at least one day where I didn't have anything to do but explore. Costa Maya has a pool at the port that is a super fun, chill place to hang out. The pool is super refreshing, filled with salt water, they have a little enclosure with dolphins you can watch, and though I don't love marine animals being kept for entertainment, it's always really cool to see them up close. I think my favorite two parts of the port was the people and the surprise performance at the pool. First, the people. Danny and I got to meet some super awesome people who were cruising on a different cruise line. We got to dance with them, share some beers, and just get to know them. They were so full of passion and love for life that it was absolutely contagious. They had to leave before we did, sadly, but I loved getting to meet people from all over the states in Mexico. Shortly after they left, these people in matching outfits came out to the pool and started doing some performances. It was so cool to see them dance and sing, and it was totally unexpected. It was the highlight of the port itself. Overall, not the most adventurous day, but such is the nature of travel. Not every day can be a 10 out of 10 adventure. The next day, we ported in Belize. I have been to Belize before, and it is easily one of my favorite Central American countries to visit. The people are incredible and so friendly, it's absolutely beautiful, and my favorite hot sauce is produced in Belize. I did an excursion in Belize by myself because Danny just wanted a chill day on the boat, and honestly, exploring Belize by myself was super exciting. I did an ATV experience and traditional Mayan chocolate making experience, and both of them were really cool. I started with ATVing in the jungle. This was so fun because I got to race through the jungle on an ATV, getting up close and personal with nature. Monkeys were super common in the area that we were ATVing in, but I didn't get to see any, so the goal of seeing a monkey in Central America remains unfulfilled. ATVing was awesome because in the middle of the tour guide had us stop. We got to try a Belize apple, fresh from the tree, and fresh tamarind. It was crazy because the guide asked if we wanted to try tamarind, to which we all eagerly agreed, and he just perused the ground until he found one and just picked it up. It was so good, a little sour, but also sweet. I already liked tamarind, but I want to eat it fresh every single day now. It was so good. Now, it was at this point that I had to put one of my personal goals for this trip to the test. That goal was to keep myself open to experiences and people. Our guide asked if we wanted to try termites. He said they tasted like Doritos, which had me intrigued, so I decided to eat live termites. Comment down below and tell me if you guys think that the termites tasted like Doritos or if you would have tried them. I would love to hear your guys' thoughts on this. Plot twist: the termites did not taste like Doritos. They were super herby and a bit minty, and overall not bad. I would eat them again, but not as my movie snack. The process to try the termites was that our tour guide took the two of us who were brave enough to try them over to this tree that had termites. He irritated a knot in the wood with his finger to get the termites to come to the surface, and then he had us stick our finger onto the tree knot until it was covered in termites. Then we just sucked the termites off our fingers and down the hatch they went. After ATVing, I went to the Mayan chocolate experience, and this was so cool. It was led by a Mayan woman whose family owned the cocoa farm that we were on. We got to try chocolate in every stage. The first stage is fresh off the tree. The pods are ripe when they are this yellowish color, and you can just split them in half with your bare hands. Inside are the seeds that are surrounded by this white flesh. You can eat it at this stage. It's a bit tart and tastes absolutely nothing like chocolate. After this, the cocoa is laid out in the sun to dry and ferment. We were not present for this because this process takes like a couple of weeks to complete, but we did get to try it after it was dried out in the sun and fermented slightly. You have to roast it on a comal over a fire, and the instructor was just roasting these cocoa pods on the comal with her bare hands. Once they're roasted, you have to remove the shell from the cocoa. The Mayans had a specific process for removing the shell from the pod. You can either toss the mixture up into the air and let the wind blow away most of the shells because they are lighter than the cocoa pods, or you can use your hands. It almost reminded me of panning for gold, only the gold in this case is pure cocoa. Cocoa at this stage is so delicious. It tastes like very dark chocolate basically, but it also has a bit of a nutty taste to it. The closest I can come to describing it is that it's kind of like eating a coffee bean by itself, a little bitter, but lots of flavor and depth. Finally, you grind the cocoa pods into a paste. This was my favorite part because the mortar and pestle that we were using were actually an artifact from the local Mayan ruin, so it was like living history. I was there helping make chocolate the traditional Mayan way using a mortar and pestle that was hundreds, if not multiple hundreds of years old. It was a very magical moment to think that some Mayan woman hundreds of years ago was doing this exact thing with these exact tools. The final try of chocolate, and I was not sick of chocolate by this point surprisingly, was chocolate prepared how the ancient Mayans would have. The first form was as a drink, and basically you mix a little bit of milk with some chocolate paste, honey, and then allspice, and you drink it as like a hot beverage. It didn't taste like chocolate milk or anything that we would be familiar with, and the closest I can come to describing it is like an Indian masala chai. Very good, but very different. The other way that I had the traditional Mayan chocolate was in kind of like almost in like candy form, and you take the chocolate paste that we made and you mix it together with honey and let it dehydrate just a smidge, and you basically get what looks like a Hershey's Kiss. And it's really, really tasty. Very dark chocolate for sure because the honey doesn't have a ton of sweetness to it. But the thing they think that was the most crazy for me is that the Mayan chocolate prepared how they prepare it doesn't actually melt in the sun because there's no milk and butter in it for it to melt. So I was really worried about bringing it back to the cruise ship and it potentially melting on the way, but it held up all the way until I got home and didn't melt or fall apart or anything, and it was interesting to see chocolate in that way. Final port day was in Cozumel, Mexico. Danny and I decided to get our butts in the ocean finally. We first started with walking around the port. For cruising, Cozumel is probably my favorite port so far. There are tons of shops and tons of locally made goods that you can buy as well. I got to catch the end of a really cool fire performance while walking around as well, but Danny and I were not there for shopping. It was time to head out. We took a short 15-minute bus ride to get to a different part of the island where we got to a completely clear boat. The boat allowed us to see all of the different coral reefs that Cozumel has, and fun fact, Cozumel has part of the second largest coral reefs in the world. Cozumel has done a ton of work to help bring those reefs back, building tons of man-made reefs. They have sunk 2 battleships for man-made reefs, as well as used the concrete pier that was destroyed by a hurricane in the past to revitalize the natural marine life. It was so awesome to see, and we got to see all sorts of wildlife. The standouts being starfish, sea turtles, jellyfish, and blue tangs, aka Dory from Finding Nemo. Once the clear boat reached a certain point, we all hopped out of the boat and snorkeled back to the starting beach. This allowed us to get up close and personal with the fish. A really magical moment when a whole school of fish swam by me, brushing up against me, and even letting me touch them. It was absolutely incredible. Following that, Danny and I got some of the best guacamole of our lives and a few beers to round off the perfect adventurous day in Cozumel. My final day at sea was packed with a bunch of little adventures right here on the ship. I jumped into 4 different rounds of trivia, and let's just say, I lost every single one spectacularly. Honestly, I think my wrong answers were more impressive than the right ones. After that, I headed over to check out the karaoke championship. The energy was incredible, people were seriously bringing their A game, and even though I wasn't brave enough to jump on stage myself, it was so much fun cheering everyone on. And then, there was the chocolate party. Tables piled high with everything from chocolate fountains to tiny cakes. I definitely ate more than my fair share and no regrets. How was I not sick of chocolate by this point? One of my favorite parts of the last day was spending some real quality time with Amber and Heather. We decided to just go with the flow, no plans, no rushing around. I let them pick what we did, and honestly, it was kind of perfect. Sometimes finding adventure isn't about planning every second. It's about following good friends into unexpected moments and making memories along the way. The final unexpected adventure? Getting stuck at the Houston airport for 8 hours after almost every flight in the country got delayed. Honestly, not the adventure I would have chosen, but even then, I met some amazing people and managed to get a surprising amount of work done. So, can you find adventure on a cruise? Absolutely you can. It's not always about heart-racing, adrenaline-filled adventures in some far-off jungle. Sometimes, it's about being open to trying something new, meeting someone unexpected, or saying yes to an experience that you never saw coming. Kind of like eating termites. Thank you so much for joining me on this adventure. Feel free to like and subscribe down below. Share this video with any of your friends that you think might be interested, and I hope I see you for my next adventure.